Hey everybody, Chris here. Just a couple of quick notes on today's episode. This is the first of 2 board meetings that we recorded with the whole team, all 4 of us. And at the time, we only had a system that handled 2 microphones, so the sound was a little bit rough, and I've done what I can to make it acceptable to me. I'm sure you guys will be just fine with it. Also, because of your continued support and continued patronage, we've since upgraded to a system that handles 4 mics. We've also upgraded our microphones, so from here on out, things are just going to get better. Thanks, you guys.
Maybe don't know. Maybe don't.
This time, power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to build power.
What's up, everybody? I am your host, Chris Hampton.
This is Nathan Drolet.
And I'm Paul Corsaro.
And I'm Blake Cash.
The whole gang is here. The whole team. We've convened here in Chattanooga. And what are you guys up to today? What happened? Anything exciting? Anybody?
I leave for Texas tomorrow, so that's good. I'm done with Amazon. And I'm no longer a Christmas minion. Locked into a warehouse, so I get to rock climb again.
We definitely missed the opportunity to have you in a Christmas minion suit.
That would have been pretty good.
Yeah, we should do that next year. Since even if you don't go back to Amazon, let's work on that.
Let's hope I don't.
Yeah. Paul coaching all day, I presume?
Coaching all day. Had some one-on-one sessions in the morning, some floor coaching at Scenic City in the afternoon, then finished with a good kettlebell class with some regulars, and now I'm here.
Awesome. If you guys don't know Paul, he's our strength and conditioning guy. He helped co-write our Kettlebells for Climbers plan, and we're working on Kettlebells for Climbers 2. It's in the final stages pretty much.
Yep.
So
We're close.
might be out by the time you hear this, since these things get just shelved for months. So we'll see. Blake, what you up to?
I was actually one of Paul's one-on-one sessions this morning.
Oh,
and
sick. You got the FMS this morning.
Yeah, we discovered my shoulders are imbalanced.
Yep.
So we worked on that and then cut my hand putting a ice cube into a jar and
I'm not even sure how that works.
broke the glass. Cut my hand open.
I think it was the shoulder imbalance that did it.
Yeah, I was using my right hand.
So you either need smaller ice cubes or larger glasses. One
Yeah,
or two.
I know. I was trying to force it in and it broke. Cut my hand open.
Or just drink it straight.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I could have
just-
done that.
yeah,
Yeah.
stop
I
being
had
a
to
bitch.
transport it here though.
Yeah. Is that, 300 feet?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, and me, I just stared at my computer screen all day doing a whole bunch of work and trying to figure out what the hell the power company is going to do in 2017. We're trying to figure this thing out. So
All the things.
all the things. We're going to do all the things. We're taking shit over. Today, however, we're going to talk about our top 3 sources of information, where we get what we believe in, or maybe we don't believe in it. It's still information, right?
We may not even list 3.
Maybe only 2.
We're going to talk about our top 2, since there are 4 of us. You guys are correct. Occasionally I'm wrong, so take me off your top 2 information sources. So I'm going to let's let the guests start here. How about Blake?
Well, my number 1.
And speaking of which, sorry, I didn't introduce you
go for
properly. Blake runs our pre-written app plans. So if you're one of those customers, you're most likely working with Blake, and he's doing a great job coaching through that. Those pre-written apps they're basically our ebooks that we've turned into the app plans, and we've updated them, and they're pretty cool. So if you're looking to have some accountability in your training, you're not so good at following an ebook, that's the way to go. Blake's your guy. So hit us up. Okay, enough interrupting. What's your number 1?
All right, my number 1 is a man named Steve Bechtel. I'm sure if you listen to this podcast, you've probably listened to him talk a lot and also understand that he has a lot of information to give out. So Steve makes me want to question and research further and kind of figure out exactly how to implement the information that he's kind of disseminating.
Yeah, and I've listened to Steve talk a lot because I'm always sitting across the table from him. So I tend to tune him out because I know I'm going to have to listen to him later while I'm editing this damn thing. But no, seriously, Steve's pretty incredible to talk to. He's always got a cool way of relating things to
He's
kind
like
of
the Yoda of climbing talk.
Yeah, exactly. For a second there, I thought you said yoga, and I'm like, what are you talking about, dude?
Steve doesn't do yoga.
He does stretch, though. I've seen it. But yeah, he has a great way of relating it to the common person, and you can really understand what Steve's talking about, which I really appreciate. So, have you guys met Steve? Or you have, Paul? I know.
Very, very briefly, yes.
Yeah.
I've not, no. But I'll be going to his seminar?
Yep.
Clinic?
Nate and I are going to his kettlebell seminar in May.
Kettlebell?
Climbing coaching.
Climbing coaching. I was just thinking of that
I was
because
like,
Paul met him at a kettlebell.
I am 0 for 2.
I am
I
so
know,
unprepared
man.
right now.
It's over for me. I'm retired. Yeah, Paul met him at a Strong First
Certification.
Yeah, he and Charlie.
Yep.
Yeah, and where can we find Steve? Climbstrong.com,
Facebook, Elemental. You go to
Elemental, and Lander.
You can find him in
You
Lander.
can find him in Lander.
You can definitely find him there at his gym. In fact, he forces us to do all his podcasts at his gym, even though it would sound better elsewhere, Steve, in case you're listening.
He actually programs wall balls for that hour while you're recording.
He does. Charlie's just in the background dropping weights on the ground. No, yeah, Steve's definitely awesome. We've had a couple of episodes, 3 maybe, with Steve, and definitely more coming since I'll be posted up right near him. So,
They're all great.
yeah, for sure. Paul.
So my first one, kind of a softball, kind of cheating for a couple different ways. It's the organization I'm affiliated with, Strong First, and there's more than one person who contributes this information, so it's not just technically one source.
It's not just Pavel Comrade.
It's not just Pavel anymore. It's a big part of Pavel, a lot of Pavel's philosophy, but some of the other kind of head instructors. So you've got world-renowned powerlifter Michael Hartle. He handles all their barbell instruction programs and puts out a lot of great content. Karen Smith does a lot of body weight stuff, really impressive stuff with tension development and just how to use your body to get really, really strong. And then you've got Brett Jones, who's the chief kettlebell instructor. He's also, I guess, going down. He's also closely affiliated with the second source of information we'll get to later. But I just really like the organization. It kind of changed how I am as a coach.
Yeah.
And, just minimalistic, simple, effective, and really nothing new in strength training, which is, to be completely honest, there really is nothing new in strength training.
Right. It's all just tweaks.
Yep.
And one thing I really like about Strong First, and I send a lot of people here, is their videos are great for
Absolutely.
their kettlebell work, is what I've looked at most. I'm sure there's other stuff out there, but their videos do a really great job of describing what you're doing and helping you understand why you're doing what you're doing. So
Yeah.
When I explain the swing, that's what I'm like, hey, pull up Strong First. Like they do a great job of explaining the kettlebell swing.
Yep.
Is there anything you prefer about Strong First as far as, do you feel like there's one mindset that everyone kind of shares or anything along those lines?
It's, in a way, very similar to a climbing community, and from the community aspect. Like, I've gone to a couple Strong First events now.
That's pretty big.
I went to a programming design seminar taught by Pavel this past June, which was similar to my kettlebell certification, which was physically. I developed a lot there, training for it, and learned a lot how to coach physically. That was this for my mind. Like,
Cool.
learning how to design programs, playing with some techniques of varying weights and loads and such that. But it was cool seeing people come from all over the country, and it was like seeing some of their best friends again. And
Yeah,
you break apart, you don't see each other for a
important.
while. You come back, it's like nothing's changed. It's cool to be associated with that organization, and just they're all professionals too.
Yep.
Very
I think
rarely-
that's a really important atmosphere to learn in as well, because then it's not so clinical. You're not so nervous. Like, it's not like there's one guy that everybody's there to see,
Right.
because you're all friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good group to be a part of, and it's not only enjoyable being a part of them, but they put out some fantastic information that can be used in a bunch of different methods.
And not only that, it seems like they put out a ton of free information.
Oh,
as
yeah.
well.
Yeah. There's a ton out there.
And that's something like kind of going with the whole community vibe. Like they do such a great job of putting out amazing information constantly to really help better everyone. It's not just like, oh, well, here's my secret package that I'm going to sell and hope you want to learn information from me specifically. It's like, no, like the amount of free information that's fantastic that they put out it's amazing.
And it's interesting too, because if you look at a lot of other performance or hobbies or really anything, the best organizations or schools of thought, they're usually the ones contributing more than they are hiding.
Yeah.
The
no
whole
doubt.
cooperation mindset, where we're all better as a whole instead of trying to compete with each other, seems to kind of float to the top, and I think that says something about.
Man. Yep. Yeah,
People overall.
I've really used kind of that model as what I'm kind of aiming for with the power company. You know, I'd like to talk with all the other coaches and all the other trainers and, you know, make it one bigger, greater community. So I've really looked at what they do and tried to mirror that on a really tiny little scale, you know. So super cool. Is it strongfirst.com? Is that
Strongfirst.com, they've got a blog there. They've got any information you might want from.
Yep. And you can get to all their trainers from there. You can find local trainers.
There's a directory. It's all there. Their blog's fantastic. A bunch of really good information out of there. Yeah, so super simple to remember too, kind of like how they go about things. Simple yet effective.
Yeah. Got to be strong first.
Yep.
Nathan Drolet.
Draw it.
Nathan Drolet.
Thank you. Yes. Right emphasis on it. I listen to people.
Real humans?
Humans. Only on the internet. preferably in forums.
With internet aliases.
With unvalidated
Yeah.
identifications.
Do you think in memes?
Exactly. Yeah. I communicate in them. I don't actually think first. No, just honestly, like something that's been big for me is listening to everyone. Like this could be someone who just started climbing, someone who's been climbing forever, like anything in between. Like it's everything that we learn, like there really are like just a handful of basic skills, and then there's just a level of depth to all of them in rock climbing. And so it's really fun to see someone who's, you know, they learn how to drop knee for the first time ever. And they're just like, oh, like I turn my hip in and like I do this or that. And, you know, it's these things that it's easy to be like, oh, you know, I've learned this forever ago. But like, I feel like it's so common that I relearn all these same things. I'm like, oh, that's right. Like, you know, focusing on breathing in that specific way when you're stressed, like is beneficial. So it's really fun to like see all these people going through these different things. You know, I mean, a lot of these people are like way better climbers than I am. And so I can kind of hear them. And then when I hit these sticking points, or whenever I hit like a certain moment, I'm like, this is what this guy was saying. Like I was just talking with a buddy of mine the other day about this. When I had first started climbing, I always heard people talk about whenever they grab in-cut holds, they like try and leverage them away from the wall. Like they intentionally, almost like you're trying to snap a crimp away from the wall. Mm-hmm. And for years I was like, I don't understand that. Yeah, I just like grab the hold and I pull.
That's funny that you say that, because I think the way you climb is leveraging the hold out from the wall.
Because
you use your thumb, and I just don't use that appendage.
Yeah. Yes. That's what makes us human.
I tuck it under whenever I grab an in-cut hold.
Drop that pinky.
And I think naturally,
I only use 3 fingers.
Yes. I think naturally, to some degree, I always did leverage a bit, but never like with the intention of what these guys were saying. And I mean, the guys who were saying it, like these are all like great, like, you know, V14 rock climbers. Yeah. And I was just like, it was something that didn't make sense. And until just recently, I'm like, oh, like this is what they were saying. You know, so everything from people who were just starting and they're like, trying to explain this awesome thing that they're going through for the first time. Like they're just understanding how like they even move through space. And it's really cool to hear that and like try and relate myself to that and like remember what it was like to go through, or even just like compare it to what I'm going through now, or to like look at people way beyond me and try and take that.
Yep. Do you ever talk to people who you feel like are, you know, much earlier in the process than where you're at? And they say something and you're just like, oh no, that's wrong. And then later you're like, oh no, they were right. Like now I get it.
Not me.
I don't know.
You're never wrong.
I'm never wrong. I'm the final say on
Or do you
everything.
think you just keep your mind open? So I think that's hard to do.
I try and keep open to things. I mean, I guess it just depends on what people are talking about. Because I guess like I want to try and view things from other people's standpoint. And sometimes I definitely don't understand where people are coming from. Like I'll hear them and I'll just be like, yeah, like I sort of know what they're saying, but I can't like get on that same field as them, if that makes sense. Like
Sure.
so sometimes, and then like it will click later on. I'm like, oh, this is what they meant by that.
Yep.
I don't feel like anyone's like wrong. It's just, we all have just different depths of understanding. I mean, like, and that's kind of the cool thing. Like, I feel like I'm just now, like with so many things, there's times I just like geek out so hard. I'm like, oh, I finally like, I understand this thing about backstepping.
Yep.
And like, I explain to someone, they're like, no fucking shit, dude. Like,
Yeah.
What do you mean you use the outside of your foot? Like, that's what everyone's been doing forever. I'm like, no, like, you outside edge when you outside edge. Like, boom. Like, it all makes sense now. Like,
Holy shit.
Yeah.
There's a meaning behind these words.
no, but it's like, I mean, like, that is a huge one for me. Like, I always thought outside edge was just like kind of a word. Like, I didn't realize you actually use like your pinky and ring toe and like when you're backstepping. And it's funny because I came across, Robin Erbsfield actually had said it to someone, and it's funny, anytime she gives someone advice and I read that someone else is like, oh, this is great advice I got from her, it turns out to be pretty good advice.
You're surprised by that.
No, it's funny that like I've heard 3 different things that people have mentioned. They're like, oh, Robin Erbsfield told me this. And
She's kind of a good climber, so.
yeah, also
And she's a good coach, apparently.
yeah. She's done a great job. Also, there's an amazing book. It's Sport Climbing by Robin Erbsfield or something like that.
Yes, I've seen it.
Oh my goodness! So it's from I think the '90s, but there's
Yeah,
this incredible
totally.
there's an incredible photo of her standing on a podium in blue jeans and a jean jacket, and the jean jacket has all her sponsors.
The sponsor patches.
on
Yeah, I
it.
remember that photo.
All pro climbers listening right now, please bring back the sponsored jean jacket. If you could just wear a tuxedo or a Canadian tuxedo on top of all podiums,
Canadian tuxedo.
that would be amazing.
I'm sorry that we just alienated all of our Canadian listeners, but
Not
it's true.
sorry.
Prana makes the stretch jeans now. You can just climb in that shit now,
Yeah,
dude.
But
dude.
do they make the jean vest?
They should.
Yeah, so Ill's got the
Jean
sweet stretch jeans.
But yeah, so it's funny, I'd read a blog, and this actually may have been Crux Crush as well, but they were just like, oh yeah, at one point Robin Erbsfield was like, hey, anytime you backstep, use the outside of your climbing shoe, like not the toe point itself. And
She had never climbed in the red at this point because backstepping in the red, you just put your whole foot in the hole.
you just glob it on there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I hadn't read this until after I had already kind of like learned it for myself. But once I read it, I was like, oh, that's incredible. Like, and I'm sure even if I had read it prior, because I hadn't learned it for myself, I wouldn't have digested any of it. But yeah, something as simple as that. It's like, oh, when you backstep, use the outside of your foot. Like, this is a tiny little thing, but like for me, it made the biggest difference in the world. But yeah, so it's kind of fun to like pick apart and talk with other people when they come across these like huge moments.
Yeah,
Like,
totally.
to kind of see what they're going through, and like sometimes you can relate it to yourself, or sometimes you can, like, I get the opportunity to relate it to someone else of that same level, like someone who's learning at that same point.
Yeah, it definitely makes us better coaches
For sure.
if you listen to all the other people at all the different levels.
Yeah.
And real talk, I just got snapped out of a reverie when you talked about jean jackets because I was still thinking about leveraging in-cut holds. I don't think I've ever done that. So I know what I'm going to do the next time I go rock climbing is try and leverage some holds. So
And I'm going to wear a jean jacket.
I thought you were going to say,
Be a good day out at Rocktown tomorrow.
I'm going to bedazzle a jean jacket.
Yeah.
Bedazzled
Seriously, though.
Power Company logos would be sweet. We all need them.
Yes.
Is that me?
yeah.
Am I up?
I believe so. That's all I got. Listen to people.
All right. My number one is this podcast, which sounds a little funny. It doesn't mean I'm listening to my own podcast, though I do. About 18 times every fucking episode. So I
Is
can
my
edit
voice
it.
really that smooth? I mean, I knew I was a baritone, but
But getting to talk to all these coaches and trainers and athletes and regular folks who have something exciting going on that I can learn from. I think it's, a lot like you were talking about, listening to everybody. I really like this idea of zeroing in on something that someone does, and then almost always there's something surprising about it that I wouldn't have guessed. And that part is really fun for me to hear from these people and start to connect more dots. So getting to talk to all these people and then getting to hand it over to everyone else and let everyone else hear it is probably my biggest source of information right now. Hasn't always been that way. But now that I'm creating a lot of the content, it's hard for me to listen to a lot of the other content. I just don't have the time. But there are some podcasts that I like when I was really getting into podcasts that I loved. And a couple of them are no longer recording, but they're still around. So you can go check them out on iTunes. And those are the Move Smart podcast.
That one's really good. If you get the chance, listen to the Udo Newman.
Yeah, Udo,
episode.
dream guest of mine. So Udo, if you're listening. And the Performance podcast, which is Coach Robert Dos Remedios and Will Fleming. And they're more of a strength training and mobility and performance podcast. And the Move Smart podcast is all about just the moving in a more functional way.
I was hoping you were going to say in a more
smart way. And there's one that's still out there called the Align podcast that I really enjoy as well. And his is similar to Move Smart, but much more quirky and strange. So
I'll have to check it out.
yeah, be prepared for quirky.
How is it compared to America's Test Kitchen?
It's not as good as America's Test Kitchen, honestly.
What can be? I mean, let's be honest.
It doesn't make me as hungry as America's Test Kitchen.
Oh, man.
But yeah, so podcasts are huge for me and talking to the guests on this podcast.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great way. And I'm especially like something that's really cool with a lot of the people in climbing who we see as like the professionals or like the information leaders. Like very few of them come from very few are like climbing trainers, like
Right.
initially by trade, like they came from somewhere else, like maybe they were engineers or wherever, like they had different jobs before this or different lives before this, or even maybe they still do. I mean, like Steve Maish is what, an economist or teaches economics?
I'm not sure.
I believe so.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's right.
But yeah, so all these people have different lenses through which they view climbing training.
Yeah.
So it's really cool, like on the whole topic of like how you discuss things and how you get information through to other people. Like engineers are going to be able to talk with engineers better than anyone. They're really not good at talking with people in general. But just like everyone has their own take on it. It's really cool to see, like if you have someone who has, let's say, a dancing background and they get into like coaching climbing, like they're going to have a completely different view of things versus someone who maybe was like a lawyer first, or like an engineer, or someone who, I don't know, just whatever, like, or has like a strength and conditioning background. Like everyone has their own pieces that they can attach to this.
Yep, and I really appreciate that. Like I love that Eric Hurst is out there and he's super into the data and the studies and all of that, because I just can't do it. Like it's not in my personality to
They're brutal.
sit down and read that stuff.
Man.
Studies are brutal.
And Eric does a good job of being that go-between, and then there are people at all levels. There are the white coats in the labs learning this information or putting it on paper, and then Eric translates it to climbers, and then Steve can take it from there and translate it a little further, and then we feed it on down the chain, and I think that's huge. It's super important to have that whole big group, that whole big family.
Especially in terms of studies, like both sides of that are really important. Like you've got the scientific studies where they've got the controls, they've got, the clinical trials and all that. But a lot of times to get those controls, you have to make things so specific that sure, it may not be proven in a study, but that could because it doesn't meet a confidence interval or the figure that shows just how reliable or valid. I get lost in the terms sometimes. Those are two different things, but it may be just outside that range, which sure, you can't publish it and say, yeah, this is a valid result of our study, but it might still work. Like there's people who try stuff and then they go back and study that, and then they either prove it or Sometimes they say it doesn't work, but if it worked for them, like if it works, it works.
Right.
For the most part.
That's really the bottom line.
But yeah, studies are tricky like that.
Yeah. So I appreciate that there's all those types of people out there.
And you have guys like Will Anglin as well who are out there like self-experimenting.
Yep.
Put out
totally.
his campus board series of posts.
Yeah.
The 301 is my favorite. The one where he pretty much says, "No
Don't
one
do this.
Yeah, no one.
Please don't do this. I'm warning you. Okay,
Yeah.
now that you've been warned, here's what
Yeah.
I did."
Yep.
It's like weighted campusing.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that's it. It's super like it's crazy to me.
Going down the experimentation rabbit hole now, aren't we?
Yeah, I was talking with someone about
Taking yours.
I know.
I was talking with someone about training that isn't sustainable. And
Yeah.
as an example, so did y'all ever hear about how Adamandra trained for Gioia, the V16 in I think Varazze in Italy?
This wasn't that video that came out about how he trained, right?
No, I don't
that
think
was
there's ever
different.
any video.
Okay.
That was more sport climbing ish.
Gotcha.
The one that
training.
everyone mimicked.
He
got hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ow, my everything. No, he was closed hand crimping on his first two fingers, and he was campus boarding. So he was campus boarding in a closed crimp with only his front two fingers.
Jesus.
And he did it for like a decent amount of time, and then I think he had to take like 2 weeks off. He was just like, I felt like everything was going to explode. Took 2 weeks off, and then came back, and he was like, well, my hands are now the strongest they've ever been. But that's like an example of
Yeah.
like completely unsustainable
Yeah.
like form of training. And like if that guy got close to like the breaking point, like
Yeah.
man,
Yeah.
that's got to be pretty heinous.
It's really possible.
But yeah, so it's kind of cool that like there are people out there like doing all these different things that we can kind of hear about it. Like I don't want to do that, but
You don't put that in all your plans?
the front two finger close crimp. Yeah.
All your clients do that?
Yeah, that's my
You must not want any more clients.
no, exactly. I'm all full this year. Go ahead and do close two finger crimping. Thanks. See me in 6 months.
Oh, man.
God.
All right, let's take a break. What's up, everybody? Chris here. Pardon the interruption. I'll keep this short and sweet. Since this podcast started taking off and we've been growing it, you guys have been asking how you can help out. I've got 3 ways for you. Number 1, you can become a patron. That just means you give a monthly donation to the podcast, $1 and up, and you get something in return. And you can check out what those rewards are at patreon.com/powercompanypodcast. Best of all, we'll keep it sponsor and commercial free for you. Number 2, you can rate us and review us on iTunes. I know it's a pain in the ass to go to iTunes and do all that, but it really helps us out. At least that's what I'm told by the podcast powers that be. And number 3, perhaps the easiest way and the best way to help us out is to share us on your social medias. Anytime you see us post up a new podcast, please share it with your friends. Tag people who will really appreciate it or who need to hear the advice that we're giving. All right, thank you guys, and back to the show. What's your number 2, Blake?
My number 2 is my peers. If you don't listen to your climbing partners and what they have to tell you, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think we all have different strengths and weaknesses and ways that we approach climbing, whether it be mentally, strategically, whatever. And I think personally, I've made an effort to listen to my friends, peers, climbing partners more and more this year. And I think as a result, I've learned so much. Even just like learning by watching someone try really, really hard and realizing like, oh shit, that's actually how hard I need to be trying. Like I'm not trying nearly as hard.
BJ Tilden.
Yeah, exactly. Like I call that the kill switch.
Yeah,
like,
no doubt.
Like climbing with him over the last year, like I learned so much. I know I was in Rifle this summer and I was trying this route and I would literally like climb up to this like ledge about to start the route and I would like put my head against the wall and I would say in my head like 3 times like kill switch, kill switch, kill switch. And eventually I did the route, but I don't know if that helped, but it definitely put me in a mindset.
And it made you look ridiculous.
And it made me look ridiculous, yeah, leaning my head against the wall, you know.
Were you in an E-bar?
No, actually, I wasn't. I was standing on a ledge, leaning against the wall, yelling "kill switch" at myself.
But definitely with 2 duct taped knee pads.
I had one.
But his leg was
Yeah,
shaved
don't
and
worry
there
about
was
it.
spray on adhesive.
Yeah, ingrown hairs, in my leg.
But yeah, I think that's super important. If the people who are watching you climb the most can't see what's going on, if you don't believe they can see what's going on, then you're just not accepting reality.
Yeah, if you're listening to them, and
they
then
watch you
just,
climb all the time.
Yeah, and shutting your brain off and like hearing them, but not actually trying to put what they're telling you into action. I mean, if you're already hanging there or on the ground and it's a boulder, like you might as well like try it once and humor them. You know, I love humoring my friends when they try and tell me something, and I'm convinced that it's wrong. And
I always
works.
like it better when they're wrong.
Yeah.
When I'm like, oh yeah, see what happened? You're stupid.
Yeah.
I like that, but more often than not, they're right, and I'm like, fuck. I don't get
exactly.
to make them feel stupid now.
Or oftentimes it'll be some like, iteration of what they told you to do. You can like take a little piece of this and a little piece of what you've done and like create something that makes sense. And then, I think also not necessarily about with like beta and climbing, but, I think just like there are lots of different ways to train and there are lots of different ways to get stronger. And I personally have like a text chain with shout out Ryan Johnson and Andrew Miller. And we talk and we share information, and, cause Ryan's a part of it. There's a lot of berating and, name calling, but I think in the end we're all better because of it. And I think, you got to listen to the people you're with the most.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you have to sift through the bullshit to get to it? Like, I mean, because at some point they're going to be like, Blake, you haven't fallen yet today. You're like, I've hit the bottom of the rope like 8 times. You're like, but you haven't fallen. Like, I hear what you're saying. Like, you're waiting the rope, but you're saying take or you're letting go. Like, when are you going to fall? Like, and obviously, you're going to say these kind of things in jest, but like,
I mean, I think you have to know. I think you have to be close enough to those friends to be able to like have those conversations. I think like I'm not going to have those with like someone that I don't really know.
Just like random belay over the project wall. Hey, bro, sit down.
Yeah,
we need to talk this out. Why aren't you wiping off your shoes? They're fucking muddy.
You got to spray alcohol on your hands before you grab the starting holds. I saw you eat that tuna.
I saw you pet that dog.
That happened to me in Waco, my one trip there.
Really?
Eating.
real?
Yeah. I was on a tour and we're eating, and my buddy Tyson was like finished eating his tuna and he was getting on full service. Mm-hmm. And the person who was touring us around was like, do you mind cleaning off your hands first before you touch the starting holds?
I actually think I know who you're talking about. But I would do the same. Like,
It's a small world we live in.
that's funny.
I mean, he hadn't touched
Yeah.
he was eating with like a spoon, but she was so scared of oil getting on the starting holds.
Okay, that's different. I was thinking, like someone's eating like flaming hot Cheetos and they're like, oh,
He was like picking up like sardines and olive oil in his hands and like throwing them in his mouth, and like rubbing his hands. Yeah.
bastard. I mean, sardines and mustard, that's one thing.
Yeah.
Maybe with some crackers, but olive oil.
Olive oil, yeah.
Savages.
Always get them packed in water.
Do you find there's a break-in period for this kind of thing? Like, have you always been able to just listen to your partners, or is it something that you've really worked on?
No. It's been a constant, like, I have to work and be conscious of, like, listening and taking that information. And, you told us I listed 3, so I wrote 3.
Yep.
And my 3rd was actually myself.
Yep.
In that, like, I take that information and I don't actually believe it until I see, like, it work.
Sure.
And I think that's kind of like the last kind of part of that process.
The last step in making it all come together.
Yeah.
Do you have any partners that you feel, or do you feel like there are any types of partners where it's really tough to have these kind of conversations with? I'll use an example of my own. I find when you're in a relationship with someone,
No,
It makes it a little bit hard.
100%.
Like I can, and I mean, I'll fully admit, like I've had times where the person I was with, like they'd be belaying me and they'd be like, well, why don't you, I'm like, I don't want to hear it. Not now. No.
Yeah,
And then like,
he says that to me all the time.
yeah, not now, chief. I'm in the zone. But yeah, no, like, it's just like, I don't know what it is. There's definitely like a tough barrier sometimes. And you see this at the crag all the time. Like, I always found this hilarious. I'd be like, hey, why don't you try that heel hook? And, the person would be like, that heel hook's not going to work. Like, no, that's stupid. And then like some other girl would walk up and be like, oh, well, I use a heel hook. And she'd be like, oh, that's great, Beta. I'm going to use that right now. But I mean, I think like you have to take a step back with stuff like that and be like, okay, like.
Yeah. I mean, there are definitely people that
Can you do it with Aaron? Like, do you and Aaron have that sort of thing?
It has taken a lot of time to get to that point. I think it's learning how to frame questions and also, I mean, like again in rifle this summer.
Questions or advice? Yeah,
this route I was trying, I was like falling in the same spot over and over again. And one day I'm hanging there, and Aaron like suggests like, why don't you lower down really low and try and link? And I was like, no, that's stupid. I don't want to do that.
No one overlaps.
No. I know this is like, the best tactic you can do, but I was like 30 feet off the ground of like, 130 foot route. And I'm like, no, if I lower down, I'm like 5 moves in. And finally I decided to do it after sitting there and like not wanting to do it and pouting because I'd fallen again and I was hanging in a tree full of aphids, And
after a dozen times of her going,
yeah, exactly.
Blake.
And then I did it, and that was like the day I realized I could do the route actually.
Yeah.
And then it was just like a matter of a couple days, and then I did the route. So I think, it takes time. I think you have to know the person really well to be able to go down that road with them.
Yep.
And to answer your question, I think there are people that I'm more prone to listen to than not. Mm-hmm. I think I only really climb with the people now that I do want to listen to, because I think those people make me a better climber. I think they like hold me to a standard that sometimes I don't even hold myself to, which is like pretty cool.
Yeah, that's good to have.
Yeah.
There are definitely times when it's helped me to step back and look at myself as the coach. Like, what would I tell myself?
Yeah.
If I were coaching me. And,
Yeah.
And I've been like, oh, you're being an idiot. You should have done this a long time ago. You just sent this route months ago, and it's worked. So,
yeah. And doing this thing now, working with you guys definitely makes me look at myself a little more closely and be a little more like critical of what I'm doing and how I'm doing it.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. You have a totally different lens to look at like what you're doing through.
When you're telling everyone, hey, just be patient and trust me. And suddenly you're over here like, no, I need to progress today and tomorrow and the next day. I progress all the days.
Every day has to be better than the day before.
Progression is linear now.
I'm failing. Yeah, exactly.
No, I fully agree. I mean, it's helped me a ton. Like, I've actually been doing some very interesting campus board workouts. And this is the most patient I've ever been with progression, like progressing a workout. Like I'm just like, hey, I'm just going to rule halfway through a session. I'm like, I can make this harder. But no, I'm like, okay, like let's just be patient. How would you like have someone else do this? And it's been fantastic.
Yeah.
Like everything's been staying really healthy. I'm getting way stronger. Like everything's feeling good. And it's been cool, but it's something that I know I never would have been this patient had I not if it wasn't my job to tell other people to be patient and be like, hey, like you're going to have some shit days. Like you're going to have some great days. Like you just have to, like, you just got to work through it. Like, and that's something like having learned from myself, like I go through such extreme waves of highs and lows. And I mean, I think anyone, when they are training hard, like there's gonna be days you go in, you're like, I feel like hell. And then there's gonna be days you go in, you're like, I'm the king of the world. Like I could crush everything. If every day was like this, a year from now, I'll be sending Lapnor project.
Those days happen like once every like couple weeks. Those days where you
they happen every couple weeks for you.
Oh,
Shit.
that's sad.
They happen like once every 3 years for me.
Oh, I thought we were going the other way. So
I'm older than all of you. That's why.
it's one of my favorite
Blaming it on age.
Fred Nicole quotes. It's him and Burns Angrel.
Wait, Fred Nicole talks?
Yes.
Oh, sick.
He doesn't just crimp.
With a cigarette in his mouth.
Yes. It's everyone has good days and bad days. We just have a lot of really good days. That's him and Burn. Just
Nice.
like those
Nice.
bastards. But they're right.
They are. They're
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I do. I think it's important to be your worst critic and your best friend all at the same time. Sometimes those are the same thing. And listen to your partners. Yeah, no doubt. Paul, I think you're up.
Yeah, so I'm going to call a complete audible from what I planned on saying.
All right. That's how we do here.
Yeah, just, talking and thinking tends to kind of have ideas bubble up in the head. But I'm going to go with coaches from other sports or coaches who deal with people from other sports, because a lot of the same problems are just from a different viewpoint. And I like, especially for me, for climbing related stuff, I look at baseball coaches or people who train baseball players. And a lot of the stuff I look for information for me is more strength training related, just because that's kind of my wheelhouse right now. I do a lot of work in the strength and conditioning field, so I look for what's going to help me improve and what I do. But baseball coaches and climbing, baseball training and climbing training has a lot in common. You're both using your upper arm, your shoulders, all that stuff pretty intensely. Like you can mess yourself up a lot.
Yep.
Oh man, especially with baseball pitching.
That's
so much more extreme than anything you'll ever go through in climbing.
And the high level baseball strength and conditioning coaches or the kind of the technique coaches, the stakes, let's be real, the stakes are way higher for those coaches.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, a MLB pitcher's arm's worth millions of dollars.
Yeah.
It hasn't happened yet where a climber is a millionaire because of climbing, as far as I know.
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
Could be there.
It's close. It's coming. But 100 millionaire because of climbing, that's not there.
Yeah.
So a lot of the coaches there have started to, especially the last 5-10 years or so, figure out a way to improve the arm, take care of the arm, take care of the shoulder, and get stronger and perform better in a way that is going to be very sustainable long term.
Yep.
Because, if you're a strength and conditioning coach or a pitching coach and you have your pitcher have a labrum tear because you're an idiot, you're not going to keep your job for very long.
Yeah, and we're brand new into this.
Exactly. And they've been doing it for long. Baseball is America's sport, or they say it is. Yeah. That's a different
They say it is.
I think it's changed, but we're not going to talk about professional
baseball
sports.
players don't listen to this. You can speak freely here, Paul.
Yeah. I apologize to any baseball players I offended.
It's no modern pentathlon, I guess is what he's trying to say, folks.
Something like that. But yeah, I think looking at sports that have been around for a while and where this.
Are you getting anything from jiu-jitsu? Because you're heavy into that right now.
I am heavy into that right now. Honestly, I'm so new to it, and it's such a new movement discipline for me. Mm-hmm. I start reading and trying to learn stuff, and then I immediately almost have to just walk away because I'm worried I'm going to get information overload.
Yeah, sure.
It's really interesting because it's a brand new sport to me, and I wrestled for a long time growing up, but moving around on a mat is about where the similarities end once it goes to the ground. It's different, and you can attack arms, you can stuff where you'd get disqualified immediately for in a wrestling match. Like that's just what it is. But
it's a really movement-based sport,
true.
And I think climbing's the same way. For instance, just the other day we were out at Golden Harvest, and you were having trouble with that second weird move into that strange non-hold. I don't even know what to call it. And we were trying to figure out what was going on, that it wasn't working for you, because I know you're way strong enough to do the move. And then I'm like, okay, I'm pulling with this leg, and you look like your leg is straight, you know, and you're not pulling with it. And then you tried it one more time, and you came off and pointed at me like, that's it, it worked, that's it, you know. So you were able to implement that little movement change, where a lot of people can't. If you tell them pull with your leg, a lot of people just can't do it. They're like, I don't understand what you mean. I can't isolate that and make that change. But you're able to do that immediately. So,
And I think a lot of that comes from looking at how other coaches coach mechanics or movements, because a lot of the best coaches don't use cues like, oh, you need to pull with your leg or you need to flex your hip or stuff like that. It's
Internal cues.
yeah, internal versus external cues. Because so, for example, an internal cue would be you want to try and squeeze your right glute as you stand up out of a squat because you're using too much left glute. Most people, when they do that, they're going to think too much. They're not going to perform the movement correctly. It's not going to change a whole lot. Instead, you could say, hey, you need to just really try and push your heels through the floor, push the ground away. That's an external cue where they're thinking about something outside of their own body. So coaches, especially on the higher level, professional sports, and just some of the better coaches out there of all sorts of different sports really have gotten really good at using cues in a way that is novel or unique and makes you really not think, but just not think about the moves,
right. But just do it.
but just do it. Exactly.
Yeah.
It helps
I-
translate the message
Yeah.
without a ton
That's
of
a good
extra
way to
thought.
put it. And Annalisa actually credits you for a lot of that, because when we're out climbing, I definitely use too many words to try and get the message across to her. And usually they sound frustrated to her because I'm her significant other, and it's it's a painful process like we just talked about. But when you say something, you can say a word and she gets the whole message that I just spent 20 minutes trying to describe, and it works great.
Yeah.
So
And I credit a
think
lot
it's
of that
huge.
to looking at how other coaches cue things and
Yeah.
pulling from there, because that's something I've really tried to get better at the last year or so. And it helps, especially when you're working with youth athletes who
yeah.
you can't give youth athletes too much to think about
Yep,
because they'll
yep.
it won't work. So,
Yeah, and they don't want to listen anyway. They just
Yeah.
want to be able to do it.
yeah.
The youth.
Yeah.
That's what's wrong.
The
So
youths.
I guess when you boil it down, Blake said peers. As a coach, my coaching peers
Yeah.
would be my second answer boiled
Yeah.
down.
I think that's great.
And I think it's worth noting that as far as cues go, there's definitely a place for external and internal. Recently, I came across some information, and internal cues, like for physical therapy, are fantastic.
Yes.
Up to 60% of your 1 rep max, so 60% of what you're capable of. Internal cues are great for helping to fire specific muscles and really focusing on that. But anything beyond that, and you'll be too overwhelmed by
You're
the
focused
the
too much
intensity.
on making it happen.
Exactly. You're not going to be able to actually do the movement. So anything above 60, like external cues have shown to be much more beneficial. For like strength or performance, like external is going to be much more beneficial.
So this is just a random question that came to me. Would you use internal cues coaching someone on like a super sub max boulder problem?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, there's a cool little.
I think a lot of our drills kind of go that way.
Yeah, I feel like half my drills do.
Yeah.
It's like, for instance, like irradiation, and I use that in one of my like higher end rooting drills, and that's like overgrip your hands, like squeeze down your lats, like tighten your glutes, tighten your core, and just try and 100% grind through a move. So that would be more an internal, but then as you level it up beyond that and you're trying to bring it closer and closer to your max, it has to be something that becomes more natural. Like you can't
Yep.
say, oh, I'm going to try and squeeze both my lats down or both these things. It's like that has to be just a natural thing that you do.
Yep. And we've had, 514 V12 climbers say that this rooting drill that Nate's talking about is hard, and they're doing it on, V5 boulders, and they think it's really difficult. So I think that, like you were saying, when it's that far below your max, it's a good way to approach it.
Yeah.
You had me do that last year, didn't you?
Yeah.
And it was really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, it's so hard.
Yeah, no, it's so. I think there's definitely a time and place, but you have to, for internal cues, you have to draw it back so much. Like one thing I've been practicing recently is pulling towards the direction of gravity, if that makes sense. Like everything I pull directly down towards the earth. I'm almost over exaggerating it. And actually, I came across this idea it was a Tim Ferriss podcast with the acro yoga.
What's the point of this? Just so we can.
We'll get there.
Okay. I'm very confused. Because gravity pulls enough on me as it is.
So no, that's just it. I'm resisting it.
Okay.
So in this podcast, as I was saying, they were discussing, Tim Ferriss brings up the idea of like yoga handstands because of Chris Sommers. And this guy's like, oh, I love the yoga handstand, which if anyone doesn't know, that's like when your low back is like arched super hard to compensate and you're not actually pushing through your shoulders. And this guy's like, oh, it's great for me because I get tons of business because I get to like fix all these people. And he was saying one of the big tricks to have someone be able to perform a handstand a lot better is have them actually press into the earth. He's like, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So by pressing into the earth, it's going to make you be lighter because you're actually like, the earth is going to press against you. And I was like, oh, that's kind of a neat concept. Like I want to do it. Like I want to see how it works with climbing. And so, I always pull like in a plumb line straight down towards the earth, basically. Like, and I only do this on my warm-ups because it takes a lot of like cerebral thought.
What do you do with your feet?
Press them straight into the earth. Okay. So same thing. I'm like, instead of like pulling my hips closer to the wall, I'm pressing them like straight down. I think I naturally always pull my hips in.
Okay. Yeah.
But hands and feet, everything pushes straight down. And the thing is that like it makes me feel like I'm snappier and like lighter. Okay. Once again, I can't do it at 100% because once you're close to like 80, 90, 100%, like I don't think about anything except for getting to the top pretty much. Like, and I try and be aware of what's happening. When I fall, I'm like, I was out of balance or whatever. But I can't think about like all these different things. Interestingly, it also like turns your lats on a ton too.
I bet. By
doing that. So it's kind of like almost like an external cue, like press towards the earth, that works internally.
Yeah. Almost like Paul's break the bar.
Exactly.
When you're swinging kettlebells.
That was like huge for me. Yeah. Just hearing you give that cue to somebody else, I was like, "Oh, holy shit!" That's like makes so much sense. And I started using it, and I was like, "Oh man, this is amazing." My shoulders are like actually like back.
It's very helpful.
Yeah, I liked it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Stuff. I think you're up.
Oh God.
Are you gonna hit us with some more weird shit like fighting gravity?
You've been talking the whole time. Is it your turn?
I'm gonna go get a beer. I'll let Chris. I'm all empty.
Nate's list.
My second one is thought leaders. So I look to, and this is similar to kind of what Paul said initially when he mentioned Strong First, and Strong First is one of the groups of people I look at. Yeah. But I personally am not intelligent, or I don't. I'm not. I'm not intelligent.
I can edit that if you want.
No, let's keep that. So I don't have the background. I don't have the training, or really the willpower to read research when it comes down to it. Like research,
it's hard, man. It's so hard.
Like there's a lot of deep diving that goes on. Not only that, let's say if research came out about lat activation or whatever, like I would during pull-ups, I haven't read the entire body of research that's gone into it. Like there's no way that I could look at this one individual piece and say, how does this compare to everything else that's ever come out? How does this compare to all the other things that are similar? Like I don't know how to look for bias. I don't know how to sift through the bullshit, frankly. Like, so what I do is I look at the guys who everyone else respects and they say, this guy's putting out great work. He's sifting through everything in strength and conditioning or in climbing or whatever. And this is the guy who, like, these are the people that are really like producing from that. Like they take it and they distill it in a way to where things aren't lost. Like you still get all the value, but it's in a simplified version. Like, and I just read what those guys put out. Because frankly, like, I have too much to learn. Like, I'm not going to read every research paper that comes out. Like, I don't have the time. I don't have the want. Like, and frankly, I'm just not skilled enough for it. Like, I think I could be if I wanted to, but that would take so much time. So instead, I look at the people who that's what they do, and I look at what they put out.
Yeah, no question. I think that's a really good way to look at it. And it kind of brings up a thought in my head that you and I have talked about before, and that was Andrew Bisharat's post about, it was on Facebook and it sparked this giant, I don't even know what to call it.
You've narrowed it down so much, Chris.
It was about we're all training wrong. Like he had...
Still not narrowing it down.
He had taken, started training a bunch and...
Oh, when he put out his own, or he created his own training wall.
Yep, and then he decided that everyone was training wrong and we're all hurting ourselves and no one's doing it correctly. And I think what the case was is he wasn't looking at these thought leaders that you're talking about, because all the information he was saying we don't have is out there. He just wasn't paying any attention to it. Instead, he was looking at the climbing trainers and climbing coaches who shall not be named, who are not paying any attention to that stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's. Thank you, Paul. Paul just brought me a beer. I think it's tough because I don't like know where he was looking from. I know at one point he was mentioning like the 5x5 training,
Right.
And
right.
I love the. He put out a post about how he built his own home training system, like wall and all that, and like how he did it on a budget. And I think
That's
that
a
was
great
awesome.
idea. Yep.
Yeah, and I thought he did a really great job of writing up about it. I think it's really tough trying to find good information out there.
Yeah, I don't think he was wrong. I think he was just new.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was just a matter of like, there is just such a breadth of information out there when it comes to training. Like it's infinite. Like if you want an easy example, look up like core training or how to get a six pack. Like it's infinite. Like, and
That should be our next ebook.
how to get a six.
How
Yeah.
to get a six pack.
Um,
Are there how do we sift through? How do you know who's
you find the thought leaders.
the good information and who's not? So are there people that you specifically look toward?
Dan, John. No. Honestly, Strong First is a great place to go. Like, I was fortunate in that I had a ton of time. Like, I listened to hundreds and hundreds of podcast episodes. And when I heard, 15 people who they were professional coaches or like different things, like they all mentioned these people.
I'll
They're
reference
like,
those people, yeah.
yeah, like, like when I talk to other climbing coaches, they're just like, oh, you know who's doing a good job? Udo Newman. It's like
Yeah.
when enough people say it, you're like, this Udo guy is probably on point with things. And you just like, when enough people that you respect or that like command respect, like when enough people list someone as like, this is a credible source, like you're like, okay, cool. Like you look to them and then who do those guys say? Like, oh, this is who I look up to. Like this is who's putting out good information. And you kind of keep going up. Like there's such a breadth of information, but I think there are key principles. I think a good rule of thumb is kind of steer away from people who are contrarians. Like if someone's intentionally just trying to be as against everything as possible, like that's tough. Like it's kind of them against the world. But
It's easy to get notoriety, but that doesn't mean you're right.
exactly. Like
Yeah.
I
And,
could,
and people see through the bullshit, I think.
yeah.
So.
I could sit here and list off the most shenanigans workouts. That may work. They may.
Yeah.
I've got one I'm going to put Chris on here soon. Gonna get those pinkies strong. I think that's actually a good exercise.
Dude, pinkies don't even work. You can't make them strong. They do nothing.
They do nothing. But yeah, like I could sit here and just list off all these shenanigans things, but it's like they're just they're methods. They're bits and pieces. Like look for people who
Yeah.
have strong principles, and that's the thing. Like there are so many differing minds, and there's so many people who have different thoughts, but like at their base, a lot of them share the exact same principles.
Yeah, totally.
And that's what's been awesome to see. Like you have these people who like, some people may use kettlebells, barbells, some people may use rings and body strength. Like some people are all about mobility or all about strength, whatever. But at their base, like almost all of them agree on, I'd say 90% of the same information. Like they're like, hey, this is the foundation. And so, yeah, it's like you have to dig a bit. But once you find it, like that's where you start, is finding that foundation, like all those basic principles. Because methods can be strewn out forever from there. Like, we could sit and talk reps and set schemes about everything forever. And
Yep.
like that's just it. They're methods. But like the basic principles are what are most important.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. And I think that kind of leads me into mine, because you're looking at the thought leaders and the people who all share similar principles. And my second is sort of self-experimentation. And I kind of come upon that by looking at the fringe dwellers, the people who are spouting off their ideas that no one else agrees with, and I'm like, well, let me take some of that. Let me see if it works, and I've used myself as a guinea pig a lot. That's kind of how this whole power company thing started. I see you really wanting to say something over there.
Isn't that why we have clients?
That's why we have them now.
That's why I trained Ryan Johnson. Just full guinea pig.
I saw him in there this morning.
Front
Guinea
two finger
pigging?
close
Yes.
grip campusing.
Yeah.
So much anger.
Oh, I'm sure.
Rage.
But he's doing good.
Good job, Ryan. We love you.
Ryan. Love you, buddy.
But yeah, I started this thing as an experiment. Like, I don't really know how to get strong. There's so much differing information out there. I'm just going to try some things. I'm going to document it, and we're going to see how it goes. And I continue to do that to some degree, even though I'm not going to let you put me on your ridiculous pinky program. No, I might.
I need
We'll
to hear
see.
about this pinky program.
It's pretty interesting.
Prolific.
It's prolific. But yeah, I think that experimentation is valuable because sometimes there are these fringe ideas that do work, and they may not work in every case. Like Paul said, everything works to some degree. You just have to figure out in what situation it's going to work, and I think that's a big part of what I've done to this point is experiment with different protocols, experiment with different exercises, and just see how it affects me, and then I put it on my clients and see how it affects them.
Would you say you're trying to pull certain concepts out of ideas?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And I've definitely gone more down that rabbit hole in later years.
More principle based.
Yep. Yeah, it started out as more just I'm going to do this workout and not knowing anything about it, and
Throw shit against the wall and see what sticks.
exactly. That's pretty much how it all started. And really it was just me making things up at first. Like, this sounds like it might work, and I had no idea. But I've definitely taken core principles from the same people that Nate talks about and that you talk about and that Blake talks about, learning from your peers. And I've taken those principles and started to apply them over and over and over. So you're right. I can see the same underlying principles in a lot of what I do.
The shit that sticks is usually some form of that principle or concept, usually.
Yeah, totally.
Is there anything, lots of endurance, that you may have found that hasn't worked for you? I mean, to be serious, that's one of the great things about using yourself as
so fired from this podcast.
as a guinea pig. Good luck editing me out.
It's a short podcast, though.
Oh man, I'm a talker. No, I mean that's one of the things about using yourself as a guinea pig. You're going to have successes, you're going to have failures. And I mean, I think when we first met was when you were 100% endurance. You could shake out on anything.
Oh yeah.
As long
if I
as
could
it was
hold it, I could shake out on it.
Yeah,
that was
as long
pretty
as it was
much the
two
rule.
pads, you were golden.
Yeah, 2 pads, maybe 3. No, honestly, that's for sure the number one. But there are definitely other things. I've realized that different hangboard protocols work in different ways, and repeaters worked really well for me early on, and then repeaters later on down the road did almost nothing for my finger strength at all. So I've definitely come to realize that at certain points in a climbing career or at certain points when you're at a certain level, different protocols need to happen. So that's been huge. And also I've realized that it doesn't, just because something works, that doesn't mean that's the only way to get there. Mm-hmm. There are lots of other ways, lots of paths to the same destination.
For sure.
And I think I realized that the most with campusing. Because
campus boarding or just campusing in general?
Campus boarding, I suppose.
Okay.
Feet off campus boarding. Let's clarify that because we just had a big discussion on the Power Company community page about that. That early on when I started campusing, it was a really great source of what I felt like was power for me. Mm-hmm. And after my shoulder surgery, I couldn't campus anymore. There was just, it wasn't going to happen. Even to this point, I still can't campus. It's one of the only exercises that I just can't do because there's some rebound pain in my shoulder when it's the low arm. When it's the high arm, it's fine. But when that right shoulder's the low arm, I get a weird rebound pain in my shoulder. So That's the only thing I can't do. But I've realized that I can get power other ways. And I think I can get more power other ways. You know, where I was last winter, which was very shortly after my surgery, felt like a more powerful place than I'd ever been, even with all the campus training. So had I not gone through that surgery, I might have said campusing is the way. But now I know there's another way to get to that same place.
You just gonna tease us? Are you gonna? Was this like limit bouldering or?
Well, people wouldn't have to pay me to coach them if I
never mind.
gave all the information.
Podcast over.
No, I think it just becomes you can gain power by becoming better at moving powerfully.
I
You know?
absolutely agree.
It doesn't just have to be pure raw power.
The campus board is one tool.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
not like an end all to like a training phase.
Right.
If you focus everything you do around a campus board, you're not doing it right, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
Yeah.
All roads lead to 159. No, I mean, like, as trite as it sounds, like, yeah, if you want to climb more powerfully, sometimes you have to climb more powerfully.
Yeah, you have to learn how to do that. Just
Yeah.
because you have the power doesn't mean you can apply it.
Your legs can be powerful.
Yeah.
You can
I wouldn't
And-
know.
all bare legs.
Yeah. Got 4 arms and a pair of getaway sticks.
Did you write that one down?
Yeah, that's in my notes. Yeah. Just working at some point, 4 arms and getaway sticks. And,
This is good. I gotta write this one down.
All right. I think we are wrapped up at this point. You can find us on the social medias, the Facebooks, the Pinterests, even though I don't know what happens over there, the Instagrams, where all the pictures are, and you can't find us on the Twitters because we don't tweet. Nate, what do we do?
we scream like eagles.
Maybe don't know.
This time, this time, this time, this time, this time to build, this time to build, this time to build, this time, this time to build, this time to build, this time to build, this time, power, this time to build, power, this time to build, power, this time to build, power. This time to build 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 power. This time to build. 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 This time.